Hi, good day everyone. My name is Jadé, and today I will be going to discuss to you the children and adolescent literature, and I will be walking you through with the introduction first, then the importance, then after that I will be walking you through with the literary elements. This presentation will focus on the introduction to children's literature, particularly on its definition, its value, and its development. Defining children's literature. You might think children's literature could be easily defined as books for kids. However, there are many different definitions of children's literature and even varying definitions for literature and children. One definition given to children's literature is from Lynch Brown and her colleagues, which says that children's literature is good quality trait books for children from birth to adolescence, covering topics of relevance and interest to children of those ages. Through prose and poetry, fiction and nonfiction, understanding this definition requires further inquiry of its two main aspects. They express experiences of childhood, both good and bad, from which children would draw their own realizations, as Lynch Brown and her companions say. The manner in which content is treated also helps to define children's books. Childhood stories told in a forthright, humorous, or suspenseful manner are appropriate for young readers. Stories about childhood told in nostalgic or overly sentimental terms are inappropriate. Another aspect to be considered is the quality. Children's books have been everywhere in stores, in drugstores, and even in grocery stores, and can be easily accessed by anyone. With this abundance of books, an important pressing question is, are they really good children's books? Quality in writing has to do with originality and importance of ideas, imaginative use of language, and beauty of literary and artistic style that enable a work to remain fresh, interesting, and meaningful for years. The best children's books offer readers enjoyment as well as memorable characters and situations, and valuable insights into the human condition. These books have a permanent value. Many so called children's books today are nothing more than advertisements for film and television characters and associated products such as candy, clothing, and toys. These books represent the low end of the quality. Another topic that will be dealt with in this presentation is the value of children's literature. According to Janet Schulman, children's books editor, The educational and emotional benefits of reading to children is expressed in the metaphor that most help give children a leg up on the ladder of life. Hence, literature for children is expected to give them personal fulfillment and academic gains. Then we have a personal value. Personal value that children's literature brings is enjoyment, of course. It has the most important personal gain that good books offer to children is the most obvious one, enjoyment, the fun, thrill, excitement, and other emotions children may experience upon reading books are positive, early experiences which often lead to a lifetime of reading. Next, we have imagination and inspiration. By seeing the world around them in new ways and by considering ways of living other than their own children, increase their ability to think divergently. Stories often map the divergent path that our ancestors might have taken or that our descendants might someday take through the vicarious experience of entering a world different from the present one. Children develop their imaginations. In addition, stories about people, both real and imaginary, can inspire children to overcome obstacles, accept different perspectives, and formulate personal opinions and ideas or personal goals. Then we have knowledge and insights. Good books offer both information and wisdom. Informational books provide factual knowledge, whereas realistic fiction, fantasy, and poetry offer insights into life, and historical fiction and biography offer both when a story is so convincingly written that readers feel as though they have lived through an experience or have actually been in the place and time where the story is set. The book has given them a valuable personal experience. Next up, we have understanding and empathy. Literature helps young people gain an appreciation of the universality of human needs across history, which makes it possible for them to understand that all humans are, to some degree, alike. Walking in someone else's shoes often helps children develop a sense of social justice and a greater capacity to emphasize with others. Then we have heritage and cultural identity. Stories are handed down from one generation to the next, connect us to our past, to the roots of our specific cultures, national heritage, and general human condition. Stories are the repositories of culture, knowing the tales, characters, expressions, and adages that are part of our cultural heritage is part of being culturally literate. The last one we have moral reasoning. Moral reasoning often story characters are placed in situations that require them to make moral decisions, young readers naturally consider what they themselves would do in such a situation. As the story unfolds and the characters' decisions and the consequences of that choice are disclosed, readers discover whether their own decisions would have had positive outcomes. Regular experience with these types of stories can help young people formulate their own concepts of right and wrong. Next, we have literary and artistic preferences. Another valuable result of children's interacting with literature is that they quickly come to recognize the literary and artistic styles of many authors and illustrators. Children who read regularly from a wide variety of children's books soon develop their own personal preferences for types of books and select favorite authors and illustrators. Personal preference and interest, as expressed through soft selection of reading materials, are powerful reading. They are powerful reading motivators. Then we will proceed to academic value. In addition to the personal benefits of literature for young readers, there are important academic benefits. Academic value first is reading. Reading ability, like other skills, improves with practice, of course. Many teachers and librarians believe that regular involvement with excellent and appropriate literature can foster language development in young children and can also help them learn to read and value reading. Second one, we have writing. Writing by listening to and reading excellent literature, children are exposed to rich vocabulary and excellent writing styles, which serve as good models for their own speaking and writing voices. The acquisition of a larger vocabulary through reading offers young writers better word choices for their own stories. Devices found in the books, such as the use of dialect, dialogue, and the precise description, are often assimilated into students' own writing. Next on our list is we have content area subjects. In a reading about discussing children's literature, you will often hear the phrase literature across the curriculum. This means using works of literature as teaching materials in the content areas of social studies and history, science, health, and mathematics. Good teachers always use literature across the curriculum. Then we also have art appreciation. If you as a teacher appreciate art for its own sake, there is much that you can do in your classroom to instill in your students a similar appreciation. An example is the use of illustration in children's picture books, which can be appreciated for its ability to help tell the story or the cognitive value and for its value as art or static value. Then we will proceed to development of children's literature. The last topic to be covered in this presentation is the development of children's literature. The earliest books written for children were entirely religious, instructional, or for the improvement of their morals and manners. Development of children's literature is quite an exhaustive topic, but for the purpose of this presentation, a few significant details will be emphasized. One significant event in the development of children's literature is the publishing of the Newbery books. In the latter half of the 18th century, an English publisher named John Newbery published books for children to enjoy. One such book, The History of Little Goody Two Shoes in 1765, is considered the first novel written especially for children to enjoy. Newbery's books were also highly moralistic, but at least someone had recognized that children needed to be entertained as well as indoctrinated. Young children read and enjoyed these books, of course, because there was a little else for them to read. However, those early books would not entertain children in today's society, and that is very noticeable. Another important persona who contributed a lot in the development of children's literature is Charles Dodgson. Charles Dodgson was a mathematics lecturer and ordained deacon at the Christ Church College of Oxford University in England. He often entertained the young daughter, Alice Liddell, of the dean of his college by telling stories about Wonderland. Later, he published the stories under the pseudonym Lewis Carroll in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and the sequel Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There in 1871. Alice was the prototype in the first of its kind of modern children's literature. Other good books that were widely read by children also appeared during the remainder of the 19th century. Not all were specifically intended for children, and certainly not all were free from moralism. However, these books were primarily entertaining and most contained child characters. This ends our discussion on the introduction to children's literature. Now let's proceed to the literary elements. I will be walking you through with the literary elements. This is for fiction. Literary elements, a review of literary elements will heighten teachers' awareness of literary criticism and to provide a more precise vocabulary to be able to express one's responses to child and adolescent books. Literary terms may also be considered as tools that students can use to initiate and sustain conversation about literature. Discussing one's responses to these books with the children, teachers, and other students and listening to their responses will also help one in becoming a more appreciative critic, understanding the different parts or elements of a piece of fiction and how they work together can help one become more analytical about literary works. These two can improve one's judgment of literature. In this review of literary elements, we will focus on the elements of fiction. The plot. The events of the story and the sequence in which they are told constitute the plot of the story. In other words, the plot is what happens in the story. Plot is the most important element of fiction to the child reader. Often, adults believe that a story for children needs only to present familiar, everyday activities and the daily routines of life. Perhaps 2 and 3 years olds will enjoy hearing narratives such as this, but age 4 children want to find more excitement in books. A good plot produces conflict to build the excitement and suspense that are needed to keep the readers involved. In young adult literature, the plot's importance cannot be overemphasized. For many reluctant readers, it is the action and movement of the plot rather than the detailed descriptions of the setting or the characters that brought them into the story. Young adults seem to prefer books with interesting plots to which they can relate. In books with well written plots, events seem logical and natural, not contrived or artificial, and reflect the interests of adolescents. Plot is an important element to all readers, but especially to young readers who enjoy fast moving, exciting stories. A well constructed plot contributes substantially to children and adolescents' acceptance and enjoyment of story. Then we have forms of plot conflict. First one, we have person against person. Conflict arises between the main character protagonist and one more opposing characters, as in the struggle between Harry Potter and Voldemort, or Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter and the Sorcerers. They are person against person. On the Sorcerer's Stone, person against society or culture, the protagonist struggles against the rules or expectations of society, and as in the struggle of Jonas against a utopia or dystopia in The Giver. Then the third one, we have person against nature or environment. The protagonist struggles to survive, often found in adventure stories such as those by Gary Paulson and Will Hobbs. Then the last one, we have person against self. An internal, emotional, or intellectual conflict puts the protagonist in different situations. Or in different directions. Then we have plots. Then we have plot features. Plots are constructed in many different ways. However, it is important to note that as compared to children's literature, writers of young adult literature can employ a number of these plot features. The most common plot structures found in children's stories are chronological plots, which cover a particular period of time and relate the events in order within the time within the time period. For example, if a book relates the events of one week, then Monday's events will precede Tuesday's, and so on. Two distinct types of chronological plots are progressive plots and episodic plots. In books with progressive plots, the first few chapters are the exposition in which the character's setting and basic conflict are established. Following the expository chapters, the story builds through rising action to a climax. The climax occurs a satisfactory conclusion or the noma is reached and the story ends. Then we have episodic plots. Episodic plot ties together separate short stories or episodes, each an entity in itself with its own conflict and resolution. These episodes are typically unified by the same cast of characters and the same setting. Often each Often, each episode comprises a chapter, although the episodes are usually chronological. Time relationships among the episodes may be non existent or loosely connected by during the same year or later that month. Because episodic plots are less complex, they tend to be easier to read and lend themselves to the recounting of humorous escapades. Thus, the reader who is just making the transition from picture books to chapter books may find these plots particularly appealing. Many easy to read books for the beginning reader are also structured in these episodic plots or in this way. Then we have flashback. Authors use a flashback to convey information about events that occurred earlier, for example, before the beginning or the first chapter. In this case, the chronology of events is disrupted and the reader is taken back to an earlier time. Flashbacks can occur more than once and in different parts of a story. The use of a flashback permits authors to begin the story in the midst of the action, but later fill in the background for full understanding of the present events. Flashbacks in children's books are mostly found in chapter books for older readers because such plots can confuse children or younger than 8 or 9 years old. In contrast, a stylistic plot device that prepares readers for coming events in a story is foreshadowing. This device gives clues to a later event, possibly even the climax of the story. Then we will proceed to the characters. Characters, the actors in a story, are another element of fiction vital to the enjoyment of a story. A well portrayed character can become a friend, a role model, or a temporary parent to a child reader. Although young readers enjoy exciting events, the characters involved in those events must matter to the reader, or the events no longer seem important. How characters are depicted and how they develop in the course of the story are important to the reader. In case of the young adults, when adolescents identify closely with the characters, they become involved with the experience in the book. Authors reveal information about individual characters in a number of ways: what a character says, thinks, and does, what others say or think about the character, or how they relate to the character, and the narrator's description of the character. Two aspects to consider in studying a character are characterization and character development. First, we will tackle the characterization. Characterization refers to the way an author helps the reader know a character. The most obvious way an author can do this is to describe the character's physical appearance and personality, portraying the character's emotional and moral traits, or revealing her relationships with other characters, are more subtle and effective techniques in the most convincing characterizations. We see the character through a combination of his or her own actions and dialogue in responses of other characters to him or her and the narrators to him or her and the narrator. Then we will proceed to character development. Character development refers to the changes, good or bad, the character undergoes during the course of events in the story. If a character experiences significant life altering events, we as readers expect that the character will somehow be different as a result of those events. Then we have the setting, the time and place in which the story occurs constitute the setting of a story. The setting's importance depends on the story. For example, in historical fiction, the authentic recreation of the period is essential to the comprehension of the story events. In this situation, the setting, fully described in both time and place, is called an integral setting. The story could not be the same if the placing another setting. The setting can be much more than a physical description. Sounds, smells, the kinds of buildings, the quality of light, the climate may combine to create mood and atmosphere for the characters and conflicts. Then we have the theme. The literary theme of a story is its underlying meaning or significance. The term theme should not be confused with the topic or theme as used in the sense of a thematic unit. Although we sometimes think of the literary theme as the message or moral of the story, it can just as likely be an aesthetic understanding, such as an appreciation for nature, viewpoint on a current societal issue. To identify the theme, you may ask yourself more than a single word or phrase such as love or growing up as prey as notes. A theme such as growing up as us to make difficult choices and decisions about who we love is much more complex and requires more thought and analysis on the part of the reader. Although some authors openly state an explicit theme, in most cases, the theme is implicit or implied and is revealed through the characters, the conflict, and the setting of the book. Sometimes a book has several themes, often with one more important than the others. Themes in children's books should be worthy of children's attention and should convey truth to them. Furthermore, the themes should be based on high moral and ethical standards. A theme must not overpower the plot and characters of the story. However, children read fiction for enjoyment, not for enlightenment. If the theme is expressed in a heavy handed, obvious fashion, then the pleasure of reading experience is, of course, diminished. Likewise, overly teacher or didactic themes detract from a reader's enjoyment of a story. It's certainly a well-written book may convey moral message, but it should also tell a good story from which the message evolves. In this way, the theme is subtly conveyed to the reader. Um, common themes in young adult books usually present the author's perspective on the concepts such as going into adulthood or coming of age, accepting responsibility, confronting problems in life such as death and dying, illness or poverty, and learning to deal with parents, other adults and friends, or with other adults and friends. Then we will proceed to the style. Will be the last one. Style is the way an author tells the story. It can be viewed as the writing itself, as opposed to the content of the book. However, the style must suit the content of the particular book. The two are intertwined. Different aspects of style are considered in evaluating a work of fiction. First, we have the words organization, point of view, sentences, then symbolism.